Hello everybody, I am Shoptarshi. Welcome to my channel. We are going to take a look at this 10-second animation, seamlessly looping animation that I made. Originally intended as a gift for someone else, but then I decided that I was going to give them something else instead. And I decided to use it for myself since I already made it. Obviously, the text was different for the other person, but I changed it to my own name. Let us take a look at the scene. This is the scene right here. Hello. Oh, right. We should do this. That's what it looks like. This is a little different from the previous scenes that I've taken a look at, in that the perspective is different. The previous scenes were all looking top down, and this one's a little bit more from the ground level, looking at the front on, and the lens, as you can see, is wider. I believe the previous ones were either 50 mm or 80 mm or 90 mm, something like that. So those were very compressed perspectives. This one's a little bit more wide. This one's not a little bit more wide. This is considerably wide, and this forces the perspective here. These lines, as you can see, and I very much like that. I wanted to make this look large, and I think this accomplishes that fairly well. These letters over here look large, and then the rest of the text recedes into the background over there. The other thing about the composition is that most of the focus is because of these neon tubes. Let's enable these so you see the bloom. It's not really bloom, it's fog glow. Technically, it's not technically bloom, but that's neither here nor there. These draw your attention, right? And that is the point of the scene. The point is the text drawing your attention. The other thing is that these reflections, the entire scene is dark except for these lights. There are a couple of other lights in the scene right here. We'll talk about those later, but these are basically for highlighting the edges and separating, adding a rim light to the text so the text pops off the background. That's basically what these are for, and I think that helps the composition. The other thing is that this star field in the background, it's not really a star field, it's a dot and plus grid that you might remember from some of my other scene breakdowns that I have seen, or maybe you've taken a look at some of my other looping animations, and you will find that I use dot and plus grids fairly frequently. This is basically one of those things, and this just, if I don't have this, where is the thing? If I don't have this, it just looks a little empty. It doesn't look as interesting as if I have this in the background. Also, this is a little blurred, and the reason for that is depth of field. These cameras, there are two cameras, we'll talk about those later. I think I only rendered out one of the versions that you are seeing, or that you have seen at the very beginning of the video. The f-stop value is here fairly low, and the focus point is here on these characters. So the depth of field probably goes something like this, just a little bit, and then everything else in the background recedes into defocus. I don't think there's anything else that I want to say about the composition. That's arguably the most important thing you can take away from this, right? The rest of the stuff is fairly simple, at least as far as like really complex modeling and whatnot is concerned. This is none of that. This is very simple. These are text converted to meshes. The reason for that is, if you'll notice, these are not straight. These are not straight. These are crooked, and these are angled and separated. They don't have the same distance from each other. That is because I converted them to a mesh, converted the text to a mesh to make it sit on the floor. And I manually went into the mesh, and then I manually adjusted the rotation until it sit on the floor. That just, I think, makes it look a little bit nicer. I think that is one of the things I can talk about the composition as well, right? Like I can make this floor be completely flat and then have this be completely straight, and then that might look fine, but I think this looks a little bit more interesting. Okay. The text is just a simple text object. Let me disable these and bring the actual text object. This one is, this one's an actual text object, or couple of text objects. One is metal, one is neon. And this is basically done by removing the fill mode here. I think the default is both. Just set it to none. This is what it looks like. Let me disable this. This is what it looks like by default. And you just set it to none and you get a shell. This is the same thing, except these are arrayed and then adjusted until they fit properly inside the shell. You have to do that before you convert it to the mesh and then move things around. Otherwise, it doesn't look nice. Otherwise, and you have to, this is just a little thing that you have to keep in mind if you're moving these around, is you have to select both of those, and the newer versions of Blender allow you to select multiple things in edit mode, or multiple different meshes in edit mode, and you just move those around. It's a little bit of a pain to select these things in edit mode, but you just you just deal with it. It's fine. Like, it's not like you're doing a full animation with these, with the text itself. If you were doing that by hand, that would be painful, but that's not what we're doing here. The other thing about modeling is these things. These are just a simple floor tile right here, and this is all it is, right? It's just a cube that has been beveled, I think, and I just imported this from another one of my scenes and I just reused it, because why not? Why do all the work from scratch when you don't have to? And let's disable this. This is just this grid, mesh 2 points, and then the floor tile on the face points. This is how you randomize the rotation slightly, and these are very small values if I had to guess, because it's in radians, and then you scale them appropriately until they just touch the edges, or just stay away from each other. You just scale them appropriately until they look right to you. We'll deal with this in a minute. This is used, as you can see, for the materials. But just make a mental note of this. I'm assigning a random value to each instance, to each tile that is instanced on these points. Random value of 0 to 1. I've adjusted the seed to something that looks nice to me, and I'm just using that in this material over here. Okay. The other thing about modeling, is there any other thing about modeling? Like, there's just this cylinder that has a material on it that acts as a backdrop. That's about it. That is about it. So let's look at the materials. Let's start with the floor tile. I'll have to show you this, so I cannot just make this large. Like, I can do this, but you'll need to see what's going on here. Okay. Let's go into material preview. Help me out here, game. No, not game. I've been playing too many games. This is not a game. This surely isn't a game. We have PBR textures from Polyhaven. This is concrete floor worn 001 texture. Actually, yeah, it's right here. It had a bunch of other things. I removed those because I don't need them. It had displacement, and then it had something else. Subsurface specular. I'm not sure. I'm not sure what the full complement of PBR textures are, but this is basically the diffuse channel, and I've modified these. I've desaturated it and then brightened it. And then what's going on with that tile color that you saw in the geometry nodes is this is what I'm converting it to. I'm applying a color ramp to convert it to black and white values, and then I'm modifying the diffuse channel with that and applying that to the base color. Same thing with the roughness. I'm increasing the contrast of the rough and the smooth parts, subtracting some value. In this case, this is 0.3. You just subtract it to your taste. Basically, I want these to be more on the smooth side than the rough side, right? And then I'm overlaying, and then I'm this is what's happening. This is bright, which means it's rough. This is less rough, and then I'm overlaying that that random color onto this, and that gives us this very nice pattern, where random pattern, where these tiles do not have the same roughness. Some of these are rough, some of these are more on the smooth side. So this gives you that kind of that rain soaked tile kind of a look. Basically, the reflections look a little bit nicer because of that, right? Like as you can see here, these reflections it's not as much, but then this one, there's a little bit more. There's a lot more reflections here. So it just breaks up the uniformity and makes it look a little bit more nice. That's basically what that's basically what this map is for. The other thing about materials, the other two things about materials, this thing, this is the neon tubes. It's basically a wave texture, color ramp, and the wave texture is adjusted to fit this this thing. This is in the Z direction because these are rotated. If you'll notice here, this is rotated 90 degree in the X direction. Don't worry too much about that. Just adjust this till it looks right. This is applied to the emission color, and the emission strength is animated. We'll get to that later. The phase offset is also animated because it looks like this. It looks like this over 10 seconds, right? The other thing, and this is really what the materials here are, this is really what I wanted to talk about as far as materials are concerned, is these are also PBR textures. This is the shell. This is the text shell outside the neon tubes. These are also, this is Rusty Metal 04 from Polyhaven. Once again, I have removed the extra stuff and I've just kept the things I need. I have once again adjusted these channels to my taste, and I've done basically the same thing here as the concrete texture for the floor. And this multiply, the only thing this is doing is this applies a tint to it. See that? It just applies that tint to it. That's all it does. The important thing here is all of these textures are box mapped in object mode, because if you use the UV mode and use flat projection, these do not look nice. You'll have to manually unwrap these, and that I imagine is going to be a royal pain in the butt. And I did not want to do that. I did not want to do that. Like, this is too much stuff to unwrap. I could do it if I wanted to, but if this was like, if you were going to look at this really close up or whatever, I could do it. You could do it, but it's unnecessary. So I just put this in object mode. And even in object mode, this doesn't look right because it's flat projected. So you just box project it and blend it in a little bit. And I think the other thing I changed here is how the image is extrapolated past the original bounds. I think the default is repeat. Yeah, the default is repeat, which looks fine. I just set it to mirror. There must have been, I think the reason I set it to mirror is because of these edges. Yeah, the edges look less stretched in mirror mode. That's basically why. If you will notice, so it is unwrapping these is ideal if you want it to look right, no matter which angle you view it from. But from this angle, you can't really tell that this is just a box projected thing. So it's fine. Is there anything else? Oh yes, these things. This is the dots. This is grid lines and circles combined to form these crosses. And then the dots and crosses are combined to form the dot and cross grid. And then the dots are offset. Whoops. And the dots are offset like that. So that if you don't do this, they just sit on top of each other. And if you just offset it, it just moves to the center, and this looks a little bit more interesting. The multiply node sits between the strength and the output of this texture. I guess I can put the texture in color, right? And then manually animate the strength. This is just a different way of doing it, I suppose. The multiply sits in between these two things, so I have a slider here to animate. That's basically what this is. Okay, that is the materials. For the lighting, we are going to go into this mode and enable the rendered view, and then we have 3 lights, and the background as well is emitting light, but the background, as we'll see, these are the 3 lights in the scene. The background, as we'll see, doesn't really contribute to the lighting beyond just the camera rays. Oh, and I suppose the main lights in the scene are the neon tubes. So these are the main lights. This is what it looks like. It's very dark. This top thing up here is area light. This just adds a little bit of lighting to the top of this mesh. I originally intended for this to have a little bit more spillover down on the ground, but since I added these 2 things here, these 2 extra lights here, to add more highlights to the mesh, I scaled back or dialed back the power of this light. So this just contributes to this lighting up here. Like there's just a little bit of light that you see here. This front light coming from here, you will notice, if you'll notice the edges of the shell, it's adding some highlights to the edges of the shell, right? and it just fills those in. The edges, because they're bevel and they're nice and round, they catch the light. And this light, the backlight, this acts as the rim light, and this separates the text object. It shows you the form of the text instead of the form of the text receding into the blackness. Now you all of a sudden have the form of the text, and it separates it from the background. That's basically what rim lights do, right? So that's what that is. These, you will notice I've disabled all of the rays except the camera rays, so these just show up on the camera. If I enable these, you might see just a little bit of contribution here. That's slightly distracting, but the main reason I disable these is that I was using an older version of Blender. Right now I'm using Blender 5.2.0 LTS. That's because this is managed by Windows, so I'm using the Windows Store version. It's neither here nor there, but the point is that I was using an older version of Blender, and in that older version, if I had these enabled, it was impacting my render times, not a lot, but to enough of a degree that I felt it was necessary to remove these, to just disable this. That is the lighting. Yeah, and obviously the neon lights are the main lights. I think I mentioned that at the start. For the animations, what do we start with the animations of? Let's start with these. The phase offset is animated from 0. There's 2 keyframes here, one at 0, one at the final frame. And in order to make the 0 and the final frame exactly the same, the phase offset has to be some even multiple of pi or some multiple of tau, some integer multiple of tau, right? I think in this particular case, this is 10 pi, so 5 tau. 3.14, yeah, that's 10 pi. And what that basically means is that this is cycling this this pattern. 2 pi is 360, so the 2 pi radians is 360 degrees. So every 2 seconds this is cycling. If I set to 0, 60, 120, yeah, these are all the same. So every 2 seconds this is cycling. And this is set to 10 pi for the very simple reason that that is the speed I wanted. You have to experiment to get that to a place that you like. The other thing that is animated in this material is the strength. So if I go into the animation and the emission strength, so you'll see that these are pulsing. These are going from 4 to 7, back to 4 to 7, back to 4. Basically, the way this enters this keyframe and the way this exits this keyframe, these angles are exactly the same. Yeah. This is not as much of a problem when these handles are flat like this, but it's more of a problem when you angle these, right? It's more of a problem when you angle that, angle it like that, and then the way it enters and the way it leaves, it has to be exactly the same. So you have to worry about the angles in those situations. In this case, it doesn't matter. The other thing that is animated, the other two things that are animated are this and this. This is also waving. This is also waving, this time from 5 to 2, then back to 5. Same thing with the angles here. These are flat, so the angles don't really matter that much. But these distances should probably be the same if you want to keep the timing, the entry timing and the exit timing equal, if you want to keep that equal. Anyway, I think I'm making it more complicated than it actually is. Just make sure these are flat and the same length, and you'll be fine. This is pulsing. The reason it's pulsing, and this is pulsing once every 10 seconds. And all of these animations are layered, if you'll notice. If I go here, this is pulsing every 2 seconds. This is pulsing every 4 seconds. No, this is pulsing every 5 seconds. So 2 seconds, 5 seconds, and this is 10 seconds. So these are all layered animations, and that just makes the loop look a little bit more interesting. It keeps the loop from looking like it's like everything is repeating really fast, right? Like at some point, if you watch the 10-second loop enough, you'll be able to tell that it's looping. But yeah, just you probably won't be able to tell within the 10 seconds that it's a loop, right? That's the idea of layering these timings. Okay, the other things that are looping are, if you'll notice, there are two cameras here. The reason there are two cameras here is because I wanted two different kinds of motions. If I do this camera just moves that much, and then the other camera moves all the way back and then back again. So that's basically it for these animations. The way these are animated, there's two layers to this again. The way these are animated is that each camera is parented to one of these empties. The low motion one is moving so the empties are animated. The z-axis of the rotation of the empties are animated. This is rotating by 2 degrees, and the other one is rotating by, I think, 12 degrees. Yes, it is rotating by 12 degrees. And so you have a low motion and a high motion just based on that. The other layer to that animation, to these animations, is that these rotations have noise modifiers on them. So all three of these channels in this particular case have the same noise modifiers on them with the same values. And the reason for that is that it looked fine. You probably want to change things up a little bit to make it look a little bit more interesting maybe, but this looked fine to me. So the thing about these noise modifiers, if you want to make them seamlessly loop, and this is something I learned from Ducky 3D. So go purchase his course and follow the course. You will learn a lot about looping animations from there. You start at the starting frame, you end at the ending frame. You restrict the frame range to the starting frame and the ending frame, and you blend the noise. In this particular case 15 frames, which is, again, I think Ducky says something like 10 or 15 frames is fine, and in my experience 10 or 15 frames is fine. So I just do it for 15 here, and it blends in the animation. What this does is that, if you'll notice, the camera shakes a little bit. That's what the noise modifiers are doing here. The camera shakes, and then so if I just play this, you can see that there's a very subtle camera shake to it. That just once again makes it look a little bit more interesting. If I had to improve this, let's say, what I could do for the animations is keep these things separate, fixed, the things that the text are sitting on fixed, but then animate the rest of them. That is something I could do. How I do it, I'd have to figure it out, but at the moment I don't know. I don't know the answer to that, but I could probably figure it out. For the cameras, For the cameras, you've already seen what the cameras animate to. These are 18 cameras with a focus point here. Okay, so the focus point is set at this empty, and the reason for that is the cameras are animating, so I did not want to manually animate the focus points. So I just set the focus point here, and then that way depth of field, that way the focus remains at the same point and it just breathes a little bit because your depth is changing, so the depth of field is going to change a little bit because of the depth changing. So there's just a very subtle amount of focus breathing there because of that. I don't think you can actually tell in the final animation that is because there's so many different elements that are animating. You probably can't tell that the focus is changing, or the depth is the depth of field is changing. For the compositing, I will have to render a frame. So let me render a frame. This should not take very long. We have a frame, and that is it. I can just disable these. This is the raw render. I'm not rendering any extra channels, just applying a fog glow. If I was to do it again, I would apply bloom. Let's see how bloom looks. Ooh, that's very bright. Honestly, that's not bad. It should probably bloom the lens, right? It should probably bloom in the lens, right? That's not bad. I'm not going to keep it because this is how I designed it initially, but that looks pretty nice. Chromatic aberration, because this is just something, once again, I learned this from Ducky, and I like how it looks. It's not just that I learned it from Ducky. I really like how it looks. I like how chromatic aberration looks. These things at the edges, it puts the focus on the center, so on and so forth. And I just like this style, right? These lines separating into different channels. I like that style. It looks nice to me. And sensor noise, which you cannot really tell. Okay, there is very subtle amount of it. Like there's a very subtle amount of sensor noise here. I was not going to show you my render settings, but honestly, let's just take a look at it. I'll just keep these in from the next video and this video and the next video onwards, because it might help someone. I have persistent data enabled, and I think texture cache is new. I think texture cache is new in Blender 5.2. This wasn't there before, but persistent data is enabled. Keep render data around for faster re-renders and animation renders at the cost of increased memory usage. As you can see, my VRAM usage is just 500 megabytes, or half a gig out of 8 gigs. I have a RTX 4060, and on an RTX 4060, this takes 7.5 seconds. If I re-render this, it'll probably take like 6. That's what I remember it taking. It takes 6.5. Okay, it shaves off 1 second of each frame for a 4060 on my settings. So it's pretty good. It's pretty good. I have the max bounces set at 4 and all the other bounces set at 4 except the volume. I have caustics disabled. I don't think caustics makes much of a difference for this particular scene. This is the important bit that keeps, I think the default here is 0.01. I'm not gonna render it at 0.01. I don't want to see how long it actually takes. But I set it to 0.05. This is something that there's a video by Andrew Price, Blender Guru, who shows you some optimized or some settings to bring down your render times. some things that you can do to bring down your render times. And this is arguably the biggest change that you can make. What you will notice is that if you have volumetrics, you will probably need to keep this really low. You'll probably need to keep this at the default values, maybe even lower than that. Yeah, I just set it at 0.05. Like this is part of my default scene settings. Like this setting, these three settings are part of my default scene settings. And these work just fine for most scenes. If I find that there's some artifacting in animations, I will reduce this. But for the most part, I do not have to reduce this from 0.05. Also, if you're setting this, you can set this to 0 because 0 for automatic setting based on noise threshold. You can set it to 0, but I find 50 to work fine, 50 and 150 to work fine. And then once again, if I need more samples, I add more samples based on what the animations look like. So that is about it. The rest of these are all default. That's about it. Do I have anything else to show you? Not really. Not really. I do not have anything else to show you. So we are going to end this here. This took 45 minutes, which I guess I did this in entirely too much detail. But then again, I'm not going to assume that every single person is going to watch every single video that I put out, right? So if you found this useful in some way, let me know. If there's something you want to know about this scene or maybe any of the others, let me know. If you have any questions, comments, or suggestions, leave them in the comment section down below. And I will see you next time. Subscribe to the channel, like the video, so on and so forth. Yeah, that's about it. I'll see you later. Goodbye.